everyone. Guys having a good time? All right. The last 45 minutes, I've actually had a very interesting conversation just back there. And it was just speaking to this topic about how do we continue supporting business as usual while still embracing new technology. And as I listened to my panel as they were prepping for this, I just was amazed by just how people are looking at this topic. And I had a set of questions that I sent them last night. And you know what I said? These questions don't even matter. Let's just have a conversation. And I know we've got 30 minutes. However, I will invite all of us to engage us. Because I can promise you guys, the guys that are coming on board here, they've got a lot of experience in this. And we're going to look at both sides. It's not only about innovation, but also about how we make those decisions that really matter at that point where we need to change. So, to help me have this conversation, Moses from ABSA. So I will not introduce what they do because they will do that when they come here. So I'll just call them on stage. Moses, please. Valerie. Dan. Kunle. And Perez. Did I miss anyone? Karibu. Karibu. Did I miss? Kunle, you here? Okay, let's go ahead. Please, have a seat. So, picture this situation here. You're running a business, everything is working, revenues are growing, systems are stable, but either comes this new technology or this new wave in the market, and then somebody presents to you a budget, let's say of 20 million shillings, and says, as a department, we want to try this out. When you ask them, okay, you want to try this out, then what's the outcome? How does it impact on our P&L? They don't have an answer. But they're just saying, trust us with the 20 million bob because we believe this will transform the business. And this is a question that I posed to Moses here, and I said, he's in banking. And he gave a very good example on your prepping, and he said, they're giving loans in the branches. Their loan book looks really good. But the retail banking director says, hey, Moses, I want to start disbursing loans digitally. And so Moses is like, why? I mean, we're still making money though. So Moses, as you introduce yourself, tell us, how do you look at this when you're making a decision on investing on something that in the near term looks intangible per se, but somebody else in the organization believes it will add value in the future? How do you make that decision? And please introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me here. Thank you to the panelists as well, and thank you, Mr. Moderator and Jiha. I think you're spot on. It was a good conversation we had in prepping for this. So my name is Moses Okundi. I'm the CIO at ABSA Kenya. I've been in technology about 2 decades now. I've got exposure in a Pan-African sense in the telco world as well as in the banking world. So I've worked for Vodacom. I've been exposed to Vodacom, Vodafone, Safaricom, and now ABSA Bank. I think exactly. So it's a very good question. And while we're discussing, one person said you're given 20 million shillings. Then Dan here was very quickly to correct that it should be $20 million. Dan being a supplier or a vendor who services various customers, of course $20 million is more exciting for him. But yes, indeed, it's a very good question. And what I think, or the approach that is useful to take is, as technologists, we need to be the enablers. We need to create the capabilities that can take the business into the future. I don't think we can come across as technologists and then position ourselves to have a P&L. Ours is to create the capability and then challenge our commercial colleagues to deliver the numbers on these new capabilities that we've created. So going back to the example of a retail banking director, the traditional business enabled through the branches works. But there is definitely an opportunity to offer loans through digital channels. And you can't just go as a technologist and say, I need a budget to create these digital channels. You have to take your retail banking director for lunch, for dinner, and explain to him or her that, here is the opportunity, here is what technology is doing, and these are the capabilities that we can bring on board to create new business. And with that alignment, once you create your long-term strategy and how you will power that retail banking digital agenda, and then you go and ask for this budget, you'll find that it's actually the retail banking director who's even pitching on your behalf, because he's already sold or she's already sold to the idea and what opportunities it brings. So I think to answer that question, my view is alignment and to paint the bigger picture very clearly to the concerned stakeholders. And that way, the budget conversations start to make sense even at the board level.
So I'll bring Dan here. And from a management perspective, so you do manage an organization. So in this sense, somebody is bringing a proposal here to allocate budgets to something that at the moment is not sort of proven. What are the things that you look at when people are bringing these proposals to your table for you to approve a budget?
Morning, everyone. So my name is Dan Kwach, the Managing Director for Africa Data Centers within the East African region. And thanks a lot to Munye and, of course, my fellow panelists as we go through this discussion around the point of convergence or clash between business as usual and innovation. So thanks. As you have rightly put it, whenever we are having this kind of requests for budgeting or support from management level so that we can enable the digital transformation that we need in an organization, there are some determinants or elements that also needs to be looked at. And these should always inform how we pitch in terms of our request for funding or our request for approval for the various projects that we want to do. And yesterday's conversations in the afternoon still really stick to my mind around how difficult it always is for our technical leaders to pitch correctly, because we are still stuck on jargon. We are still stuck on making sure that we are demonstrating how good our technical solutions are, but we at times do it in a way that doesn't resonate well to the audience. And in this case, I will say the top management. This could be an exco team or could be a board that we are seeking approval from. Now, breaking it down to what really matters. What will really matter is, first and foremost, an appreciation that the digital transformation bit or information technology, as Moses has rightly put, should be pitched as a business enabler. Let's never pitch it as a technical tool, because guess what? Whenever you pitch it as a technical tool, we also have a budget that should be allocated to other business elements. The other business elements could be on the marketing side, could be on HR, could be on any other function that the business still sees as right. So the best way to pitch is to make sure that you present it in such a way that it will resonate to the various stakeholders that you're having at the board level. How will you make that happen? Position information technology as something that is going to bring ease of doing business. Let it be something that is going to make it easier for the business to capture the various risks that you have in an organization and at least foolproof the organization from the effects of us having those kinds of risks, being experienced in the organization. Make sure that security doesn't come at the tail end, but really is at the heart of the solution that you are presenting. You must make sure that customer experience, as Freshworks has clearly demonstrated, no business will want to fly blind. We all thrive on feedback and views from our customers. If you can position technology to give us a good view and visualizations as to how our customers are experiencing our products, how exactly are they consuming it, and what feedback are they giving us to help us better the solutions and the products that we are offering them, then that will help us in the decision making in a much easier way. I think I always look at decision making to fall within the metrics of, first and foremost, let the technology offer relief in terms of offering quality of service, or bringing a product or a solution that cannot be offered by competition. So that's what you need to do. The second thing you can probably also look at is the cost element. Make sure that you are pitching to a team with a full appreciation that this team also has a target to cost cut or manage costs. So make sure that you can offer a total cost of ownership in terms of how much we are going to spend on that technology and how useful is it going to be in the full term in terms of the benefits and the cost savings that it could also bring. The other bit you need to also bring is how resilient and how dependable will the solution be to the organization. There are instances when you can actually end up buying technology, but it ends up not being used to the extent that we are anticipating. Picture this. We all have mobile phones, and this was a conversation that we were having just before this. We all have mobile phones, and we were asking ourselves, that for the mobile phones that we have, we definitely make our own individual decisions to buy them. But do you make use of its full potential and capabilities? You'll realize or appreciate that you're probably doing 30% of it. Now, that has probably pushed some of us to make sure that we are never upgrading just for the sake of it, but always asking ourselves whether it's worth the effort. So these decisions that we make at individuals levels from a cost perspective, it similarly applies from an organizational perspective. Then last but not least, whenever you are wanting to adopt technology, it can never be done in isolation of other factors, especially organizational culture. So there it is. You probably adopted, like COVID pushed us hard, and all of us went to virtual platforms to have meetings, to interact with our customers. But guess what? I feel from my own point of view, we all fell into digital fatigue. So a number of organizations then had to start struggling with the bits and pieces around us being too rigid, us probably losing it in terms of our social interaction with our customers, and we were all waiting for COVID relief so that we can as well have the interactions that we used to have in a normal way in our offices and in a normal way with our customers as well. So there are some social elements and organizational culture that we also need to make sure we are addressing so as to make sure innovation becomes part and parcel of the lives of our staff members where we work. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Val, you spoke to us about security. And an interesting point you made is organizations look at security at the far end of the innovation process. So speak to us how we embed security, even as, and look at the example of legacy business, where we are saying legacy systems sometimes are really stable. They might be slow, but they're stable, they're secure. So you bring in innovation here, and you're not thinking security first, you're thinking innovation first. So speak to us about how we embed security in the innovation process.
So I'm Valerie Angira from Westcon Comsto. I'm the cybersecurity channel account manager for the rest of Africa. So thank you so much, Muni and the rest of my panelists, for this opportunity to speak about security and how we can embed security right from the start. If you take an example, of course we want to innovate and we want everything to flow smoothly. And most of the times we find that security is an afterthought. But right from the start, it's important that everybody has security in mind. When you think of a very Kenyan example, when you buy your car 50 by 100 plot, the first thing you do is fence it. Before you think of anything else, before you think, what am I going to do with this plot, you fence it. So even as you're thinking, for the example that Dan gave, that he's talking with the bank to see how they can give loans on mobile platforms and automate that process. Yes, it's well and good, it's going to make us more money and all, but to think, okay, so now we need to make this a secure platform. So working with the DevOps and the SecDevOps to ensure that everything, the security is embedded, but we're not thinking of it at the end, but we have the budgets. When you're presenting this budget plan to the board, that it's already there, that it's not coming at the tail end.
Thanks, Val. And on to you, Perez. You worked with, when I looked at the DTE website, you guys are doing an amazing job, first of all. And I look at, for lack of a better words, you worked with what you'd call legacy organizations, legacy businesses. So as a supplier, as a vendor, and I really don't like that term, let me use the word partner. As a partner to these organizations, what kind of resistance do you see as you bring in the new tech, trying to help them improve on their systems, to transform their businesses? What kind of resistance do you see from legacy organizations as they try to evolve and as you support them?
Thank you very much, Muni. My name is Perez Omondi. I'm the sales manager at Down to Earth. So legacy systems are like the old systems, something that it's working already, but the client knows it's not broken, right? And they wouldn't want to change what is not broken, but at the end of the day, they need to do things like what Moses was saying. You want your mobile application loans on your phone. Like, think about 10 years ago. You had to walk into the bank, maybe to the ATM systems to withdraw your money, and right now all that can be done through the click on the mobile phone. So we get things like budget constraints. Users don't want to move because they say we don't have allocation for budget for this kind of project. Number two, it's the resistance to change. A particular user, a company would not necessarily want to move because this is working for us, we know it, and they know that it will now involve a lot of training, skill upgrading, competencies to be done, and they are comfortable with where they are. So they feel like this is an hindrance for us to start a new project. Now, remember that we need to show the value as the partner, like you've said, unlock it for them. What solution, what problems are we solving with these solutions that we're posing to them? I mean, the clients would want to see things like flexibility, value, choice of all these solutions. So end to end, show them the value, solve the problem, and with time it becomes easier. They actually allocate the budgets for this particular projects, and then we find a common ground where the customer knows that we are not really interested on transaction kind of business, but now showing value and improving the systems that they work with.
Thanks, Perez. I'll move to you, Kunle. And there's an interesting point that you brought up when we are preparing for this, and this is just reminding us that we are actually Africans. And in Africa, we have this hierarchy system where there is a boss. So speak to us, what happens? Does the idea die because the boss doesn't like it? We're innovating here. There's a young guy, doesn't have to be young, but there's a guy in the team that has a brilliant idea, but the boss just doesn't get it. So does the idea die because the boss doesn't get it?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kunle Okunfolabi, based in Lagos, Nigeria, where I work as a systems engineer for Nutanix. In IT, we love abstraction. So that name is an abstraction for a professional who helps you to succeed in your digital transformation. And now back to the question. So this is where the culture, organizational culture, and our societal culture also plays a big role. Often we see the idea would die, and what helps the idea to thrive is a culture of respect. So, and would like to be practical here. I remember many years ago, I mentored a young guy who had brilliant ideas. So when he joined the organization, his manager would take him to management meeting, and I called him. I said, "Come, never say anything in that meeting. You have no idea. But you go behind and tell your manager the idea that you have. And your manager will take it up, will present it. He will love you." And I said, I bet it with you. In few months, you will get promoted because you are very important to the manager. And that's exactly how he played it out. And he got promoted. So that's how the idea can thrive. We need to understand that we live in Africa in a very hierarchical society, and we respect that, our culture, and manage. So there is a saying, you have to manage your manager. You have to manage the management as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kunle. And back to you, Moses. And looking at now from a board level, and for example, for the tech teams, you spoke about people looking at you as cost centers as opposed to revenue generating teams. So speak to us about how you bridge the two. Being the CIO and you're not generating revenue, but however you believe that the job you do is adding value to the business, but you don't have the ability to show that this is what I'm bringing. How then do you bridge that between yourself and the business teams so that it's a collective decision at board level that allows you then to innovate?
Yeah, thanks again for that question. I think it's critical to have an overarching strategy, a multi-year strategy, because often a technology investment is not going to generate revenues immediately, but it's going to create a capability that your commercial colleagues can leverage on to grow their businesses. So my approach typically is to have an overarching strategy, typically 5-year strategy, and it's usually based around 3 pillars. I call them the 3 Ps: people, process, and platforms. So from a people perspective, it is critical again to involve all the people in the organization. It's not just a technology conversation. Everyone from HR, culture, finance. If you're going to do cloud, for example, essentially you're changing the way the organization operates. And it's not just a technology conversation. With finance is used to providing capex to buy new hardware. Now, when you go to the cloud model, which is pay as you use, it becomes more of an OPEX, operational expenditure conversation. So their thinking has to shift, and you have to carry them along. What I'm doing practically at ABSA is through a partnership with the local university, we want to run a training program throughout 2023 around 4 areas. That's agile ways of working, DevOps and automation, cloud, as well as cybersecurity, and a 5th one, data as well. So the target there is to bring people along so that everyone across the organization is aware of where technology is heading and the opportunities that technology presents. From a process perspective, and Valerie talked about security, if you're going to adopt cloud, and I mean, let's face it, cloud is not cheap. Sometimes many people go and sell cloud as cheap, but and every vendor will tell you their application is cloud ready, but you find it consuming the same number of calls at 2 a.m. when there's no one using the service as it does at 2 p.m. when there's hundreds of thousands of people using the service. So it's critical that you create a structure that manages your cloud adoption journey. I've set up a steering committee that vets how we want to execute that cloud journey over the 5-year duration, what qualifies for cloud, what is practical to push to cloud. And then platforms. So you can't look at every piece of technology in silos. The view is create the platform that is future fit. And that way, any new feature that comes in can just plug in. So let's say it's a service that enables RTGS, for example. Create that microservice, expose it so that it can be consumed not only internally, but you can create an interface for partners to come and consume the same service, say, for instance, through an API gateway. So, once you sell that overarching strategy built around those pillars, when you go and engage the board or you solicit for funds for various initiatives that you want to do, and you can demonstrate how it fits into the strategy, then you find that you've already laid the highway for your pipeline of initiatives, and it gets easier as you go along. And also the thing is, there's the aspect of risk. Rather than attempting to boil the ocean or chewing the entire elephant in one go, take it in bits. Do a little bit, show value, and you'll continue to get buy-in as you progress.
Thanks, Moses. Now, this is to the partners in the panel here. And when somebody brought in an interesting scenario where we know we need to innovate, but we don't have the budget. But you guys are calling yourselves partners, right? So I come to you, I know I need this innovation, but I don't have the budget. So how do you work with your partners to support them in the innovation journey? Done. Will you collocate my servers and I don't have money? But I'm promising you, like Moses is saying, I've got a 5-year plan. This is what it looks like. But right now, I don't have a budget. So how do you support your partners in this journey?
Thanks a lot.
Sorry, I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Very much understandable. I will say yes. That's why we sort of a number of times drop the term customers and talk of partners, because we look at it as something that we both need to work on by way of contributing resources so as to serve the last mile user or customer, so to speak. So I could probably give practical examples that ourselves, in as much as we are in the data center space, so we offer colocation or host a number of customers, a lot of whom are present in this hall today. We have had instances and opportunities where we have had to rationalize the price that we are collocating those customers, because the customers themselves still don't have a critical mass in terms of users for the infrastructure that they have in their space before they can be able to pay 100% of the collocation rates that we are offering. So that is collaboration that we've done. We've had instances where we've been able to sort of, I would say, defray, if not defer, the costs for collocation for a specific category of customers who have run into some challenges. A challenge could be that a customer has actually come into the Kenyan or Nigerian or South African market where we operate, and they probably still haven't gotten approval to run or offer their services. In which case then, they have their infrastructure in the country, but they still cannot operate and don't have any revenues. We've had to have conversations with those kinds of customers and defer the cost for collocation till such a point that they can be able to get a license and ultimately get customers that can then help them meet their costs related to the products and services that they offer. And I'm certain the rest of my partners have also, in one way or another, been supportive of customers in that approach.
Let's let Perez speak for herself. So how do you support your partners?
Okay, what Dan has said makes a lot of sense, but also you find that we have different categories of plans. So we can do this in 3 ways. The first one, we can extend, A partner wants to innovate. They want to move from a legacy system to a new system. So extend whatever they have, maybe if it's to the cloud or wherever, creating a hybrid. So the initial investment of this is not quite hefty on the client at this moment. They can continue using this system as we extend it. So we create a plan on when they can have enough budget, but we are doing it in a phased approach. The second type is now when we migrate. We can just do a simple migration, also staged to different levels, whereby the client knows that by this time, within maybe the next year or 3 years, I'd love to have moved my whole old infrastructure to the new platform. That's, again, another approach you can take. The third one would be to replace. You'll find a client already has the budget. We can call them maybe a network refresh. So we sit with them, we calculate the BOM, do the estimates. This is way before they're even ready to actually do the uprooting, right? So we do the plans before the client goes, and now they sit down with the board, they get the budgeting, and when they are ready, they already have a pricing that is stipulated, and now the migration becomes quite easier. Then remember, we also have like agreements in between. They wouldn't be able to meet the whole cost, so we have pricing plans where we can actually do annual in advance or quarterly. So everything is actually tailor-made to meet the customer's budget and how they want to phase out the payments.
Thanks, Perez. So, Val, security can't wait.
Security can't wait. There's no way you will be implementing, Perez will be implementing these solutions and saying, no, we won't put in the security because the customer doesn't have the budget. And I think as Westcom comes to working with our partners such as DTE, we're now also able to come up with the similar kind of plans so that we are together in this framework, together in this plan through us, the partner, and the customer, so that we are able to say that, okay, the customer is going to pay you in 1 year. Even us, we are going to come up with a payment plan with you so that you can receive all the solutions required and deploy the same to the customer, and then pay us once at the agreed upon time. So we are very supportive of such plans so that we ensure that the security is integrated, like I said, right from the start.
Just to add on what Val has said, most IT businesses are actually channel-based. So we have the OEM, then Val as the DST, and us as the partner. So we all have to align ourselves to make sure that we have the customer's interest at heart. So it's a ripple effect going backwards and trickling down to the client.
Thank you. Let me just pull in Kunle for a minute here. And Moses talks about cloud not being cheap. We're talking about budget here. We're talking about balancing this. So how do you come in? How do you just get into the midst of this, figure it out with the client just to make sure that they can take off?
You're right. Cloud is not cheap. In fact, a trend that we are seeing now is declouding, where because of operational cost, that organizations are repatriating workloads back on-premise. So how do we help our customers with this? So we have financing comes in here. Okay, it's a little bit hard to do in Africa, but not impossible with willpower, with commitment. And that's why we don't just call our partners. We call them value-added partners. That's some of the values that they had to us. And it's also one of the reasons why many Western country OEMs don't do business directly here. So we do them through the partners. So in many cases that I've seen, so the partner we offer financing or credit to the customer, and they can they can get started. So that's one way of addressing or balancing that. We're also moving forward with the subscription model. Adopting that from the cloud. So the subscription model helps. So you don't have to put in all the capital upfront. So you can do subscription for 1 year rather than paying 5 years or 3 years upfront. That's also helpful.
Thank you. And I see Ian is looking to join our panel, but before he does, any questions from the Thank you. There's one there. Could you kindly have the mic over there? Someone to assist, please.
As they do that, I'm very excited as all these suppliers are saying they can offer credit and free service. I'll hold you to your word.
Let him ask. Please go ahead.
Thank you, the panelists. My name is Thomas Kiteri from Isuzu East Africa Limited. I have 3 questions actually. 2 questions to specific people of the panel, 1 question to any member of the panel. And the first question will go to Dan, and it's more on the cloud computing. We understand right now most businesses are moving to clouds, and it's the most efficient way of doing business, especially if you check on the total cost of ownership of the services that we push to cloud. But currently in the country, we are still experiencing a lot of issues when it comes to infrastructure, especially internet connectivity to businesses. And most of the businesses that we are having out here, they are time-bound. You miss a little, your systems goes down a little bit. Then if you check on the business impact analysis of the loss, it is quite big. But when we come to cloud computing, you realize that most cloud service providers have contracts with other service providers. You find Microsoft is in the country working with Liquid Telecom, which is acting as the internet service provider to most of the businesses. So the contracts that we are having with the cloud service providers, you find that when things go down, they still have to talk to other service providers before your business comes up. And that really terrifies most of the businesses moving forward. So, based from your own experience and the business analysis, what is your take on that? How do you deal with such kind of scenarios to make sure that the migration of most businesses in the country to the cloud is effective? The second question goes to Val, and it's more on the security aspect. We've talked about acting on our security, the security of our systems. And we realize right now there's no business that can work without a secure platform or a secure system. But most businesses have focused more on external threats than the internal threats. For example, we do a lot of budgeting on making sure that our systems, our firewalls are more secure, but we forget that the most vulnerable source of threats is actually within the organization, the people that we have entrusted with access to the platforms. From where you sit, how do you advise businesses to make sure that they balance in between the internal threat and focus more also on, if it's educating or whatever they have to do to the internal people, more than the external people, to avoid what is happening today? And then finally, to the rest of the panelists, whoever can answer that, when we are talking about security, we also have to balance in between having secure systems, but also not compromising how people are going to use those systems. We have had scenarios whereby you put a lot of security into your systems to an extent that even people within your organizations are unable to perform their daily activities. How do you advise businesses to make sure that when you are working on securing your platforms, you work on balancing in between what your organization can accept as risk and making sure that your people can still be able to perform their daily activities on the secure platforms? Thank you.
All right, thank you. What we'll do is 30 seconds each, and I'll also need Moses to speak to the man in the middle problem. The man in the middle problem. The threat being internal as opposed to be external, because I know that's a big one in financial services. So please, 30 seconds as we wrap up.
Thank you so much for that question, because actually the data shows that 95% of all threats are human error. Of all attacks are caused by human error. It is we, the users, who are the biggest problem. So when it comes to balancing between how to manage the internal threats versus the external, you find that it's so important to educate the users. And I always say that you attract more flies with honey than with vinegar. So let it not be punitive that if you report an incident, everyone is on your case, you're being stigmatized, it's terrible. So reward the users for reporting those incidences and continuously educate them, because a lot of times people are they're coming from a good place. In situations where you have a cashier in a hospital, really their back is against the wall, there are 15 people waiting, this person needs to take a break. So what do? They share their password with the next guy, just like, okay, just hold on for me. They don't realize just what that sharing the password can do to the whole network. So continuously educate and don't punish the person who comes to report, hey, my friend gave me her password. Don't punish the friend who gave the password. Reward them and use that as an opportunity to see where the gaps are.
Done? Migration?
As relates to migration and us working on making sure that we prevent instances where customers experience failures or challenges whenever they migrate to the cloud, we are doing a lot. But as Africa Data Centers, the number one thing we are doing, we want to bring these cloud players and have their infrastructure locally in Kenya, as opposed to us consuming these services, and these services are probably sitting outside of our continent. First and foremost, as Africa Data Centers, we take pride that really the first installations of these cloud players' infrastructure, when you talk of the Microsoft Edge, AWS Edge, we take pride in the fact that they are all offering these kind of lower-based services running from our data center facilities. There's a lot of expansion plans that all these players have, and we are working closely with them so that we can make sure that we are their number one preferred, we are their preferred choice in terms of them bringing those services closer to us. as relates to them using cloud service partners as opposed to us as end users consuming services directly from them. I think first and foremost, what we need to do is to make sure that we are preventing chances of failure. So the data centers that these cloud players are going to set up their infrastructures sitting in, most definitely will meet their global standards in terms of resiliency, in terms of quality of service and experience. So we will bring in our operational experience to make sure that the 8-minute level threshold that we talk about whenever customers sign up SLAs with us does not just remain as something that is signed on paper, but really it's a guarantee that we are going to offer 100% availability throughout the year, as we have been doing. So we will prevent chances of service failure, as opposed to us even looking at how to address service-affecting incidences.
Great. So as we wrap up, Moses, please speak to the man in the middle problem.
Yeah, I think so. The way to operate is a zero trust policy. I know that sounds harsh, but I mean, when you're managing critical assets, then you have to have the bar as high as possible. And with that, for instance, there's no reason why Moses needs to access the CRM system, for example, because it's not part of my core role. And so I wouldn't have access to that. Or if I'm an IT admin, then I only have access to what I need to manage. And you need to have processes in place, privileged user access, and there are tools for this, like PAM, password access management. In terms of internally, implement stuff like 2FA, just to ensure that the authentication is at the right level. Network access control, don't allow rogue devices. So you have to have a multi-layered approach to security. And I also take the point that Valerie mentioned with regards to education. I think that's still critical, even as you ensure that the tech is in place and the controls are in place. Everyone needs to be educated, and their level of awareness needs to be raised accordingly. And it's not a one-off. It needs to be done continuously. And outside just the people in the organizations, customers as well. We have our elderly customers today who are experimenting with digital banking, for example. We need to figure out how we can empower them so that they probably could be more vulnerable to social engineering than others. And we really need to support all the customers in that regard, right at the point of onboarding, adoption, and engagement, so that education cuts across internally and externally as well.
All right. Thank you, Moses. And I know, Ian, if you could give Dan 10 seconds. He has one point to make about the boss issues.
Thanks a lot, Ian. You raised a question around does the idea die if a boss is rigid? I will say, and I wanted to just share this out of experience, ideas will never die if they're good for the organization. And of all the things, let's try and make sure that we are not bosses, but rather we are leaders. And as a leader, accept inputs and accept ideas. Make sure that you create room for R&D or research and development. Be innovative, and being innovative means accepting to try out things, putting in resources in terms of time and effort for that. So that's what I wanted to say. And let's have a culture where we can allow for that fail-fast approach. Ideation is not bad, and making sure that we try them out is not a bad thing, but will always help us so that we can better how we operate or the kind of products and services that we are offering. That's what I wanted to share. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Moses. Thank you, Kunle, Perez, and Valerie. The conversation continues, but because of time, we'll end it there. We're all here, I think, until Saturday, if I'm not wrong, so let's engage. Let's continue having the conversation. Thank you all for listening to us.